Okay, so this is a new video for the updated Foundry VTT module for the Rolemaster Unified system. The module's by Bobm, who's done a fantastic job automating the Rolemaster Unified rule set so that it works for Foundry. And this video is just to show the new action tracking and movement tracking system that Bob has implemented for the system. So I'm just going to quickly show you the options that you have to be aware of. So in the game settings, under the Rolemaster Unified Core Law section, you will have two options: an action phase per round option and a movement tracking option. Now the action phase per round dictates how many phases there are in each round when you process combat. So you have the one phase, which is the fast round, 2 phases, or the 4-phase tactical. Now this video is going to be to show you the 4 tactical phases for combat. And then movement tracking, we have 3 options: either tactical, fast, or none. Tactical is where movement is tracked over each phase. And then depending on the distance you travel, it will track how far you've traveled and what action penalty you will receive for that movement distance, depending on the pace that you've used. Or if you decide to use AP movement, it will show you that, but that's something we can show you in a bit. The other options, fast, is where you can do movement for the whole round and it will calculate it averaged out for the movement that you've done compared to the whole round, and it will then come up with the closest penalty or AP cost for the amount of movement you've done. So you won't have to do the actual movement within the phases, you can do it in one go. But like I said, for this video I'm just going to concentrate on the tactical option. So let's enter combat. So first things first, for anyone who doesn't know, you've got all these options on the right hand side, which are the different sections of the Foundry building options. One of them is a combat encounter tracker. If you right click on that, it will open it in a different window. Now I would advise you to do this because it's really important that you keep track of what's in the chat window, because that will show you all of the relevant maneuver rolls, attack rolls, damage, etc. But you'll also be allocating action points in the combat tracker. So rather than having to switch between the two each time you want to check each, if you just right click and pop it out, you can have the combat tracker separate from the chat. You can actually do that with chat as well, to be honest, if you want, but I don't bother. I just usually have this set to chat. And then what you do is you select all of the tokens that you wish to place into the combat initiative tracker, and if you right click on one of them and you press the cross and you click the cross swords, it will then populate the initiative tracker with all of the combatants. Now in Rolemaster, the core system, as rules is written, assumes that initiative is rolled for every new round, assuming that the flow of combat can change round from round. And I actually have set one of the options in the settings under the Rolemaster Core Rule settings to have it auto roll initiative at the start of every new round. And all this means is, by having this set, I don't have to manually tell it to roll initiative for every combatant when a new round starts. The players don't either. It will just do that automatically at the start of a new round. So at this point we're running on, at the top here you can select the type of combat you're using, and we're running with 4 tactical, and I'm going to use full tactical movement to show you that in this video. So if we start combat by pressing the start combat button, it will then roll initiative for each of the combatants. And it will arrange, obviously, the combatants in order in the initiative tracker. Okay, so because I'm using the 4-phase tactical round system for this video, you have to select any action points or and complete any movement for each phase, because I'm using the tactical movement as well. So in this case, Fen, who's an archer character, who's a scout style character, his intention is to quick load his bow. Now, because Fen has the talent for quick load. When you click on the free actions drop down options here, you'll see that quick load comes up as an option. If you didn't have that talent, then it would only be drop, item, cast, instantaneous spell and perception that would come up as the options. But because he's got the talent, he'll select quick load, and that means he will load his bow, and you can see it automatically ticks completion. And then he's going to start spending the action points towards a bow ranged attack. So he will select from the action points selection, he clicks the menu, opens up the menu, opens up attacks, and then selects ranged, and that will then show that he could attack theoretically this round, but he would be using 2 less AP than optimal, so he'd be at -50, but he doesn't want to do that. But one thing that Fen does want to do now, because he's very aware that Halvard will probably be charging at the ghoul, so Fen is going to move around to the side to ensure that he doesn't have too much cover in between him and his target when he comes to fire the bow. So as I move him, you can see with the movement HUD that it will come up with the different potential paces he can travel. Now when you move him while acting, the maximum pace you can travel at is run, which is why you can see that it's actually restricting the movement to the maximum at run pace, and it won't allow me to move any further. But in brackets there's the current pace penalty that he'll be under at that pace. Now that penalty has already been reduced by his footwork skill when it comes to the movement HUD here. So for run it would normally be -75, but because of his footwork skill it's showing what the reduced penalty would be. But in this case, to minimize the penalty he's going to have, I'm going to say that Fen starts to jog to the side to basically start to get his range, and he can do that each phase. He can do some movement. But at this point, as you can see now, I've moved him. It will highlight that he's moved at a jog pace, the distance and which phase it was moved at, and the current penalty he's going to be acting at. And then because he's finished his phase and there's nothing else for him to do this phase, we'll end his turn. Now as a player you would have an end turn button here, but as a GM don't click the end combat because that will end all of the combat. You click the little single arrow here which clicks to next turn, and that is Talos. Talos is a spellcaster. So but one thing he wishes to do, he's a bit cautious, so he's going to do a snap perception roll on the battlefield. Now the perception action, if you look under action points and other, there's a perception option which is 0 to 2 APs. So that means a flat roll with no penalty would be a 2 AP action, and for every AP less it's a -25. Now in this case I'm going to have Talos do a snap perception roll using his free action, and you can see there's actually the free action option here. So I'll select that, and at this point I can do the roll for him. So if we click under skill, awareness, perception, and you can see it's auto filled in that it's -2 APs because he's spending 0 AP on this action. So he will get to do his roll. And he's failed his perception, so as a GM I would probably have got him to do that as a hidden roll. And now that these buttons here at the bottom of chat are actually now coded in, if he had actually selected blind to GM first and did that roll, then he wouldn't actually see the result. The result would only come up on my screen and I'd be able to describe the result to him. But obviously at this point I'm only running with the GM screen. So we'll tell the player, yeah, he has a quick snap look around the battlefield and doesn't see anything that stands out of interest. Now because that was a free action, he's still got his normal action point to spend this round. So what we're going to say is Talos is going to start to concentrate, prepare a spell for the following round. Because he wants to cast a spell that's higher level than him, he has to do at least 1 round of preparation. So if you look under magic, you've actually got an option for spell preparation. Now what that does is spell preparation will actually add a concentration action to him, because spell preparation doesn't use AP, it requires concentration, which then will half his base movement rate, which if you look at his arms tab and his movement, this will automatically be halved by the system. So normally his walk pace would be 22, but because concentration has been put on, it's automatically updated, so any movement he does will automatically show the half pace. And any AP he spends will be in effect worth half. So if he spent 4 AP on an action that required 4 AP, it would actually only be worth 2 APs. So he's going to concentrate on this spell, and at the same time we're going to say he's going to maneuver himself around the battlefield. So he's going to move to the side, probably following the similar direction to what Fen is going. Now I've just moved him there and it's actually showing as a pace penalty movement because he's moved while acted. But what I can then do, if I go to action points and select a movement and movement on here, 1 to 4 APs, that's actually changed it now to an AP movement action, so it won't actually bestow a penalty. And now because when you're moving while acting, it caps your movement at the run pace. If you're able to do a faster pace, you might actually be able to move a little bit more. So what we're going to say is using an AP movement, Talos actually starts sprinting to the side to get away from where he thinks the main fighting is going to be going on. And now because he's done all his first actions, his first AP actions, he'll end his turn. And then we come to the healer in the party. I forgot to take that off when I was testing, so we'll ignore that. By the way, if you see what I've done there, if there's an action already on here, so in the case you had a concentration action on the spell, if you click on the action, you've got an option to remove it, and that's what I've just done as the GM. Now you can do that as a player if it's in the same phase that you're actually acting in, but as a player you can't change actions for previous phases, but as a GM you can. So if a player makes a mistake, he can ask the GM to remove it, and then you can add whatever action points you wanted in its stead. So what we're going to say is the healer is going to perform a normal perception roll, so not a free action. Now you've got two options here. You can go straight into your skill before you've added any action points, and you can select the perception. Now it'll automatically recognize that we're in the first phase, so if you were to do this action you'd only be using 1 AP, and if I rolled that, it will automatically fill in the skill action here where it's used 1 AP to do a perception roll. Now in this case I'm actually going to do it as a 2 AP action, so I'm going to remove that, and what we'll do is we'll select the other and perception, and then she'll also continue that perception next phase, and she's not going to do any movement, she's going to hold a position. Now Halvard here sees the ghoul ahead of him, and being a burly, tall, 7 foot tall Northman fighter type, what he wants to do is charge at the ghoul. Now you can either select your attack action first or after movement, so if Halvard decides he's going to start off just jogging in the direction of the ghoul, and then while he's doing that he's going to be starting his charge attack action. So we've got there, I've added the action point for the first phase, and he started jogging, and because he's got a footwork skill which is enough to negate all of the jog movement penalty, that's why it's not showing a penalty while acting. And then what the ghoul's going to do, seeing Halvard charge towards it, it will be intending to go onto defensive mode. So if you have a look at the ghoul's arms tab, you can see the different defense types. It hasn't got a shield, so it can't do blocks, but it's got the option to do passive, partial or full dodging. Now you've got two ways you can add this on. You can either go to actions, defense, and you can choose like the partial dodge, which is a concentration action, and what that will do, it will add the concentration action on, or let's just remove that. Or if you do the partial dodge, go from passive to partial in the character sheet, it will also add that concentration action on. So whichever way you wish to do it, it doesn't matter. If you do it on the combat tracker, it will automatically change what's on the character sheet, and if you do it on the character sheet, it will automatically change whatever you do on the combat tracker. So this ghoul will decide to go into partial dodge mode, so he's going to utilize about half of his round's actions to dodge in effect, and he's going to be attacking Halvard as Halvard gets within range, and he's not going to do any movement. He's going to hold his ground and wait for Halvard to arrive. And then that's the first phase over, and then we go into the second phase of combat. Now Fen intends to continue with his bow attack, so he's used 1 AP, and he intends to add another AP on. Now there's a couple of ways you can do that. It's 3 ways actually. One, he can go in to the attack and he can manually add on the range like he did there, or 2, he can hold shift and click, and it will duplicate the last action. I'm actually going to take that off just to show you the third one. Or something else he could do the rest of his movement. So he's going to carry on jogging around to try and get a flanking position. And now if I end his turn, it will automatically duplicate any current action that's being done on the previous round. So theoretically, you don't have to add it on. If you end your turn, it will automatically add it on. And then we come to Talos, who's concentrating on his spell preparation, and he's doing movement. And what I want him to do is continue his movement. So I'm going to hold shift and just click that to add the movement action. And he's going to now go into sort of a dash pace as he starts to sprint past Fen to get a wider position on the Ghoul, so he's away from any of the danger. And we'll end his turn there, his phase. And then we come to the healer, Silvara, and she wants to do a perception. Now at this point, because I've already put one phase point, one action point in there, I can automatically go to the skills and roll the perception. And as you can see, it's saying 0, because when I roll it, if you see here, it will automatically fill in that action point usage, because it will recognize that's what you're doing. So you can either do it that way, or you can add the action point and then roll. It doesn't really matter. But to be honest, to make it a quick process, if you know there's only one more to go, then you can just do the roll and it will add it on. So do perception, you got a partial success. We'll say that she glanced around the battlefield. She sees an opening off to the left in the cavern and sees a little bit of movement, but she can't see any sign of anyone actually in the chamber, so she assumes someone's leaving. And that's all of her action this phase. And then we go to Halvard. Now Halvard basically wants to continue charging at a jog pace at this point towards the Ghoul. Now one thing to be aware is worth just being aware of how far you've got to move, and yeah, you don't want to get to the last phase and realise you haven't got enough movement to make the distance. You have got, if you look up here, you can go to measurement tool. You can make measurement tools if you want, but usually you'll get an idea. So if you look at this, I can pretty much see that if he does a couple more jogs in the third and fourth phase, he should be able to reach the Ghoul, or he could do a run pace in the last phase if he needs to make a bit further. So he's charging forward, and because I just want to duplicate it, I'm going to end his turn, and again that will duplicate the last action he did. Now if there was someone in range, he could now attack at -50 because he's using 2 less APs, but he's not choosing to do that. And now the Ghoul is concentrating on his partial dodge, and he's just going to continue his attack, meaning to attack Halvard when he comes in range. So I'm just going to end his turn. Now we come into the third phase. Now in the third phase, we know Fen can actually complete his bow. So if I shift and click, it will complete his third AP for the bow shot. So now he can roll at +0. And I'm going to say that he continues jogging round as he does so. And at this point, he's going to opt to shoot at the Ghoul because he's got enough action points to do it without a penalty. Now, what I will do is he'll target the Ghoul. He'll come to his HUD and do his bow. Now, one thing to note here, even though we've got the action tracker and the movement tracker showing he's doing a jog and it's only a -20 pace, the footwork skill can only be used for melee attacks, not for ranged attacks. So if you actually look in the roll window here, it's actually corrected that, and it's kept the pace penalty at -50, which is the normal penalty for jog, and it hasn't reduced it by his footwork skill, because you cannot use it. You cannot use your footwork skill for ranged attacks. So that's why he's doing that, and obviously I'll just get to fire. And as you can see in the chat card, he'll be able to hover over the little exclamation mark to get a breakdown of his attack. So his OB was 101, he got a pace penalty of -50. It'll tell you what the attack chart is that's being used. It'll tell you the range. Now, where it says DB and I hover over it, and it will give me the Ghoul's DB breakdown. If this was the player, there is a setting that you can have set in Foundry, in the Rolemaster system in Foundry, that it won't show that DB information. But I might show that in a later video. But if you want to show it, you can click that as a GM and it will reveal it to the player. But in this case, because I haven't got a player screen open, we'll not worry about that. So he fires the bow, and we'll say maybe because of his movement, he fires wide and the arrow flies into the air, missing the ghoul. And that will end his third phase, and then we'll go to Talos's third phase, and Talos just intends to continue his movement. So again, as you can see, I've done the movement and it's still showing as a penalty because I haven't actually added on the movement action, and that's now changed it back to an AP. So he continues to dash around towards to get the flanking position that he wants. And obviously he's still concentrating on his spell preparation as he's doing it, which is why his movement rate's reduced by half. And then the Alvin healer, so she's done her perception, and now she's a bit worried that she's getting behind Halvard. So what she's going to do is she's going to do an AP movement, and she's going to sprint after Halvard. Now the reason it's limiting it to sprint at this point, you're asking why can't she go dash? You can only go dash after you have moved at least a jog pace in the phase before. So as you can see, if I do the movement again, next phase, it will allow me to go up to a dash pace. But for the round, that's all she's doing at the moment. She's just done a perception, and now she's chasing us after Halvard. And then for Halvard's third phase, we're going to duplicate his action, and he'll carry on jogging forward. So he's like jogging in a charge towards the ghoul, and then the ghoul just intends to hold his ground. So again, I'm just going to end the turn and it will duplicate the attack. And now we start the fourth phase. So Fen has got one action point left because he's attacked, so obviously he can't make another attack. Well, theoretically he could, so let's show that. So theoretically he could rush another attack at this point. In fact, he can't because he hasn't got a loaded bow. He can't use his quick load because once you've used 0 AP free action in a round, any future free actions become a 1 AP action. So as you see, he could draw a weapon here, which would now become a 1 AP action despite him having quick draw or quick load. But because he's got quick load that he can use at the start of next round, I'm not going to do that here. What I'm going to say is he uses some movement to position himself a little bit better, ready for the following round. So he sprints forward into a flanking position, and then we'll end his turn. Now Talos has been moving while doing his spell preparation. There's no reason why he shouldn't do anything different, so I'll hold shift and click that, and he will continue dashing around, trying to maintain his position near Fen, and we'll end his turn. And now the healer, again, I'm going to say she's just using the rest of her AP movement. She's using a second AP of movement, and this time, if you can see, she can go up to a dash pace because I've used the sprint the previous round, but she doesn't need to use that much, so she's just going to sprint up behind Halvard to try and keep her position in case she needs to do any healing magic for him. And we'll end her turn. And now Halvard, he will do his last little bit of movement. Now, even though it's saying it's only a walk movement at the end, he's still getting the benefit of the jog when it comes to the charge bonus because it takes the fastest pace out of all of the phases used. He will then add his last attack on, and now his attack is ready. So he will target the ghoul, and then when I do his roll window for his attack, you will see that it's automatically detected that he's moving at a jog pace because he's added the charge +1 size bonus on. And the reason it's jog +0 is because if you look at his footwork skill, if you look at his footwork skill, it's +50, so that negated the full -50 that you usually get for jog. So he's now attacking with a +1 size for charge, and he charges in, but maybe distracted by the movement he's doing or the dodging around of the ghoul who's using partial dodge. The axe strike swings wide, so again we can see the breakdown here of his attacks, which gives you the skill bonus. It gives you a pace penalty of -50 and actually shows you there the footwork skill has been used. And obviously it gives you the breakdown of DB. Again, as a player, if you've got it set in to hide this from the players, the player won't see this information. But you can see there it's given DB of +54. And if we actually look at the ghoul, it's got +6 base DB, but it's getting 48 from the partial dodge, which is given in the 54 defensive bonus. So the attack from Halvard misses. And then finally we'll come to the ghoul. Now the ghoul will do his last attack action. Now at this point I'm going to say, in fact let's do that, we'll assume that he hasn't got his weapon drawn. So the ghoul wants to make a claw attack. Now what you've got to think, what you've got to realise is the range of the attack is the little circle here that's around the outside. So if we equip his weapon again, you can see that the weapon has a longer range. But let's unequip that. So what he's going to do is, using his last action point, he can still move for his last phase. So he'll just jog forward, just to close the distance with Halvard, so he can attack him. So he steps into Halvard's range, and because he's got a quick enough footwork skill, it's not actually imposing a penalty. He will then target Halvard, and he will roll for his natural attack. So he'll do his claw attack. And of course, what we've got the breakdown here is he's done a jog pace movement, but because he's got a footwork skill, and I think he's got a massive footwork skill if I remember rightly, footwork skill of 111, I think that is 115. So because he got a decent footwork skill, he's negated any jog penalty. But because he's partially dodging, which is a concentration action, which means that every AP he spends in this round is only worth half. It actually means that he's only using the equivalent of 2 APs for the attack, which is why it's saying attack at -50, and that's why it's got it here, attack at -50. And because Halvard is charging him, I actually think this might be wrong. No, sorry. Okay, yeah, so he's doing a jog pace, so he's actually getting a charge bonus as well from that. It's saying faux pace bonus, but that charge bonus is actually coming from him charging at jog pace. Now if you have 2 individuals charging at each other at a certain pace, it does combine the pace that they're traveling at, so it could actually stack it to a higher pace size, but in this case it's just his movement. So we'll roll for the attack. And the ghoul connects with a rather weak strike, which shallow cut into his chest, which is delivering 3 points of damage and some bleeding. Now, because this ghoul has got the attack sequence claw bite next round, it means this ghoul can now deliver a bite next round as an instantaneous action. But now this is his phase gone. So when I click end turn, it will end the round, and it will start a new round, and it will automatically now roll initiative, and we start again. And that's basically how the phases work when you're using the 4-phase tactical, and you're using movement tactical. Okay, so next time I'm going to show a very brief video just showing how movement's different when you're using faster movement or no movement within 4-phase combat. And then later on I will also do a video covering faster rounds, which means that you're actually only using 1 phase, and in everyone's phase they will actually spend all of their APs when it comes to their turn, but we'll show you that in a later video. But for the time being, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video.